Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our monthly appointment Impact Talks. Today, we have the pleasure to discuss with Bettina Palazzo some topics about ethics and leadership. Bettina Palazzo is a business ethics consultant who started her advisory 20 years ago. She explored this topic during her PhD and after a couple of working experience decided to apply her knowledge in real life, bridging different worlds, business and ethics, obviously, theory and practice, companies and NGOs, and maybe the most important couple, work and fun. Bettina, thank you for being here, and let's start from the first question. Bettina, what does it mean to work with ethics? What do you do, and can you give us some example of your work?
Yes, working in ethics is basically a big adventure. It has been for me for a long time. I kind of stumbled into it by accident, but then I found it so interesting that I never really stopped, at least professionally. And in the beginning, it was very difficult because the market was not really ready. And this changed only, especially in Germany and Europe, after 2006, when there was the big scandal with Siemens. Then all of a sudden, compliance was super important. And the awareness of what is ethics for a company became much higher. But I still have good memories from one of my first projects in ethics that was with a big department store company. And as often in retail, so just to give you some ideas of what I do day to day, is that they have problems with that things disappear. Yeah, so it can be that clients steal, it can be that employees steal, it can be that employees are distracted and they don't pay enough attention, and there are all kinds of gray areas. And here we worked in a very positive way, because you don't really win people if you have another control and then you have problems with privacy if you want to work with cameras to see what's happening in your stock room. So we try to work with stories and explain to the people working in the department for how to deal with these gray areas, how to take care of the unclear questions. And that helped a lot to bring the topic out into the open and turn it into something that people can talk about without being scared. And the effect was really dramatic, because the loss in the stock went down by 10% in the first year. And so we have some numbers what ethics can do for companies. It's always super important. And they had to fire less people because of these kind of misbehaviors. Yeah, so turning into, because it turns out if you create a safe space where people can talk about these difficult questions, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to talk about them, because everybody has these problems in their work life, be it in retail or wherever. And that clarifying these things, making it something that where you can focus on the solution, does a lot for eliminating problems, for creating also a better work environment. And so what are the areas where I work? So it's always very varied. When people ask me what kind of companies, organizations I work, and that's also the great thing about this job, because like, for instance, the last 2 years I've been working with 2 UN organizations, a completely different world. And I've been working with, at the moment I'm working with an automotive company, last year with a German foundation that wanted also to develop a code of conduct, because one of the first things you want to do as a company is to create some kind of written document where you write down, so these are our rules on when you take a client for dinner. Yes, because that is a classical tricky problem. So how much can this dinner cost? When is it in too much trying to influence a person, but at the same time, it's also part of normal human business behavior that you create a relationship. So these are some of the challenges in this work, are that since there are so many different topics and I come in as an outsider, but like all consultants, that's an advantage because you see things differently, but you also know much less in some respects than your clients. So to figure out how you can help them to ask better questions. So I'm not coming in there answering all the questions, which sometimes is a little bit expected from a consultant. And then also you have to tackle some tricky issues and be honest about this with your client, because they wouldn't need me as an ethics consultant if I tell them, oh no, it's all nice and beautiful in your organizations. They want to tackle difficult problems. And here I see my role as a critical friend. So because I'm not in the system, I can tell them things that they may not see, that nobody else dares to tell them. So for instance, last year I was working with an organization that had problems with conflicts of interest. And it turned out that the CEO was member of the board of a supplier, which is a pretty obvious conflict of interest if you buy from people and then they pay you money and you're kind of integrated in their organization. Yeah. So then so I had to speak up on this and explain the CEO this is maybe not the perfect role modeling she wants to do. And of course, there's always the risk then you might lose the contract with the client. But so for me, that's I'm trying to tell them these things in a nice way so it's acceptable and they understand it. But then if I don't do it, I'm not doing my job. Yeah, so I hope this gives you a kind of a glimpse into my world.
You've been very clear. And speaking about your cases and the people who, let's say, join in your activities, who is and what does it mean to be an ethical leader?
Mm-hmm. Yes, the ethical leadership thing is something that is kind of vague. Yeah, so we all have an idea about ethical leaders, but when for instance, I also teach at university, when I ask my students, so do you have something like a moral hero? Yeah, somebody you look up to, a role model that you admire. So then they say the usual things like Mandela and Mother Teresa and Gandhi. But then if I ask them about who are their moral heroes in business, they don't really know what to say. And I think that's something I think that I'm kind of dreaming of changing, that it should become cool to be known as an ethical CEO. Because if you now look like the super rock stars of big company CEOs, they're not really the ones where you would say, yes, they're ethical leaders, like Steve Jobs. Yeah, great. He did move things, but ethical is a little bit was not his strong point. Elon Musk, lots of discussion around him, but so still inspiring. So how can we maybe also in the media change this a little bit and put more these kind of behaviors in leaders to the forefront? And yesterday, when I was thinking about our talk, I had this inspiration that in fact Italy has lots of famous ethical leaders in business, like Adriano Olivetti with his great idea of involving employees and giving them 2 hours of lunchtime, 1 hour to eat and share, and 1 hour to do something cultural, which then is not something where you would think, oh, does this really serve the bottom line? And maybe not, but in fact it did, because it created this kind of curiosity and innovative spirit in his people that they came up with all these amazing inventions, like the calculating machine, and you probably know all of the products better than me. Or there is Brunello Cucinelli with his human capitalism, and I checked out his website yesterday, and it's really amazing how he links the ideas, and he has quotes of philosophers on his site, and so I find that very fascinating. So, but besides these kind of dramatic and impressive things, I think ethical leadership is something that that shows up a lot in the little daily things, and that's why it's tricky, because in the hustle and bustle of business, and managers have lots of things to do, they tend to forget this. They tend to forget that they are always under observation. So back in my first case with the department store, they told me this really interesting story, that there was this the director of one department store, and people saw that he always went to the canteen with this little tablet, but then he didn't pay. And they thought, oh, he's eating for free. This is unfair. But in reality, he was paying with all his paperwork at the end of the month. He just didn't pay cash at the cashier. But so you have to really be careful how you are seen and you have to explain it, because especially everything around fairness is something very sensitive. And even though if you as a manager might think something is fair, so I promoted Carla and not Peter, and you think it's clear, they know, but so Peter might be really feeling dealt unfairly because you haven't explained him why Carla got the job and not him. So this kind of that's something that leaders need to realize, that they need to take care of how their fairness is perceived. So that's a important thing. So the awareness, the fairness, and then that they, like in my project, in my very first ethics project, that they should talk about these topics, because only if you communicate as a leader about ethics, you have a chance that your team members will talk back to you and tell you if there's a problem, or if there's something you've missed, you haven't seen. And this then can create a speak up culture, which is very much in discussion at the moment, because we have seen with many recent scandals, like with Volkswagen or Wells Fargo, that very often people in the company have known about the problems for a long time, and we always ask ourselves, so why didn't they say something? And of course, we have also seen that talking about ethics and rules and expectations in the business context is sometimes a little bit hard. And that's why I'm at the moment working with my friend Alison Taylor at Ethical Systems on creating a little game with little cards with questions, so that people can start having a fun and easy conversation about ethics. So helping to make the communication more interesting and less scary.
Okay, thank you a lot. It's very interesting, the fact that you organize workshop in order to make people able to discuss and dialogue between each other. And let's go to the last question. Bettina, is it possible to trace a relation between ethics and happiness, or these two words have nothing in common, and let's say, to make a joke, ethics is just about gray moral rigor in a kind of Kantian fashion way? There is a relation between ethics and happiness, and also business and work.
Yes, it is. in a way, I find it a little bit surprising that ethics has a kind of this image of brown rice and Brussels sprouts, and it's might be good for you in the long run, but it's such a party breaker, and it's not fun. But if you really go back to the roots, what ethics really is, and if you look more at the kind of Aristotelian Greek tradition, and I always imagine that Aristotle and Socrates are sitting there on the agora, and they're having their little frappe, and they're discussing, so what is the good life? How should we live together? How can we become the best version of ourselves? So then you see it has a lot to do with happiness. And on the Bruno Coccinelli website, I saw yesterday this nice quote of Socrates who said, "Only the just man is happy." Because what is not seen enough, that we all have this need to feel good about ourselves. And if we do something that makes us feel not good about ourselves, we always come up with kind of smart justification. Yes, but I had to do it because of this, or my boss was mean to me, that's why I took the pencils from the office back home. Yes, but but you still have to come up with this energy to justify it. So if you just stick, so it can be helpful, but of course you need to do some inner work for this. What are your values? What's important for you? That will then, in an Aristotelian idea, help you to flourish and become a good person, and that needs practice. And well, yes, sometimes you might need to make a little sacrifice. It's a little bit like in sports. Yes, you have to get into the habit, do it regularly, and then you get results and are feel better and healthier. And so I think we have to see ethics like more like a sport, yeah. And that you get better at. And the thing is probably also that we have this idea of ethics that you either are ethical or not. But in reality, we are human, we are not machines, and we are all a work in progress ethically. That's why we need to work our ethical muscles and improve. And if you make improvements, that is fun. And I see it all the time in my work. If there are organizations where the ethics is really bad, you have a toxic work situation and it doesn't make you happy. Or if you have an unethical boss, that can make your life miserable. I think the people at the Olivetti, they were quite happy.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you a lot, Bettina, and this metaphor of ethics as a kind of sport remind me the very meaning of ethics, which is ethos, habitus.
Yeah.
It's kind of dress we put on ourselves. Well, thank you a lot, Bettina, and see you soon. And